we'll just scooch on over to your story, and if we can, we may have to break it up into two parts, which I'm completely fine with, because I love a good story. When we talked about when I told
we do
call Rennetta, he goes, "Oh, you're going to get all the stories and all the details." I said, "I know, and I'm here for it." So Rennetta, why don't you take us we're going to talk a little bit about you and your mama and you becoming a mom, and then watching your daughter become a mom. And then Renetta and Annaliesa, same thing. Just talk about you becoming a mom, and then kind of we'll talk about. I think you two are so so much alike. I just adore talking to both of you.
Thank you.
Because and Renetta, you just always have I just depend on you for all the best details.
Well,
and,
amen. I can
just
give
for
you
all
the details.
I love that you have pages of notes. I love it, and I wouldn't have expected anything less.
On an easel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got them on an easel here.
Well,
the only problem is I made notes on Mary and Mama, and I didn't make any about us because I guess I thought we were talking about the older ladies.
Well,
but
we're talking about the generations. So,
right.
But for you, you don't need notes. You'll just tell me about you. But tell me a little bit about your mom. Like, tell me about where you were born and your mom and what she did growing up and what you know about her history.
Mama? Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, I was born in North Carolina, and I have been in and we moved to South Carolina when I was about 4 or 5. And I've been in Texas since 1963, and I understand from people I still have my North Carolina accent.
Yeah.
So I've been in Texas since I was 11 years old. So I've been in Texas 61 years. Yeah. And I don't guess I'm a native yet, but anyway, but I was born in North Carolina. My mother was Nancy. My dad was Forrest Andrew Jr., but he had red hair, so he went by Red, or a couple of his sisters called him June for Junior.
Yeah.
But I was kind of born in this little mountain town called Valdez. And when we were actually there to see my aunts last September, it's only 40 miles up the road, but I had never been there. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go back and see Valdez. And we drove around the hospital enough to where I could see the older part of the hospital. And I wanted to go in and say, could you tell me where the nursery used to be? There was COVID around at that point, and I didn't want to take anything back into my aunt's house.
Yeah.
But anyway, my mother, her dad was Thomas or Tom, and her mother was Wren. And of course, my name, Rennetta, is from her name, and then my mama's name was Nettie. So thank goodness they didn't name me Rennetti. They named me Rennetta. So I'm named after both of my grandmothers. My mother, I don't know, you just want me to start telling you about my mama?
Yeah, tell me about Nancy. Tell me about your mama.
You know her, and you probably knew the spunky side of her.
I did.
And you probably knew the unfiltered side of her.
I did.
She also...
Which is what I like.
She would also fuss at the Cowboys. She got louder as she got older. And she would say, she liked the old Cowboys too. And she would say, Jerry Jones is... And you'd go, Mama.
Was she complimenting it or criticizing it?
Criticizing. She was blaming everything on Jerry Jones. But anyway, I'll tell you about my mama. She was honest. She was fair. She was dependable. She was frugal. She was independent. She could be critical, and she really lost her filter the last couple of years. Like, she'd look over and say, why is that woman over there wearing that hat? And you go, Mama, she can hear you. That woman's too big to be wearing that short skirt. And you'd go, Mama, shh. But she was spunky. She wore her high heels till she was up in her 70s and finally gave them up.
And her clip-on earrings.
And her clip-on earrings. She never got hers pierced. And they were dangling, too.
Yeah.
And she drove her red Mustang. And she never could understand why she could leave her house in Fort Worth and be to our house in Plains in 5 hours when it took me 6 hours. And I said, well, Mama, that's because I'm driving the speed limit and you're not.
She was from North Carolina, the birthplace of NASCAR.
NASCAR. Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Time for our speed
well,
limit.
that explains
Yes.
it.
Mama was the glue that held our family together. I'm the oldest. I have 2 brothers, George, who was named after Grandpa George Davis, or great grandpa, and my brother Forrest the Third, who's named after Daddy because he said, nobody knows my name. They all call me Red. Mama was the glue. And she and Daddy were married for 34 years. And Daddy was an alcoholic, and she finally had enough, and she was independent. Not only did she quit smoking cold turkey when she was 80 years old, you know, she decided to go ahead and divorce Daddy.
Yeah.
In fact, I was supposed to go with her to visit a lawyer on a Friday. And on that Friday morning, or no, that Thursday night, I went into labor with Annaliesa. And I've always said I went into labor because it wasn't that I didn't want she and Daddy to get a divorce, but, you know, I like to put things off if I can.
Yeah.
And I think my brother went with her. But anyway, she and Daddy were married for 34 years. I will say that this is the kind of woman she was, that if we were in town for anything and we had a family meal, Mama invited Daddy to come and eat with us.
Yeah.
Because she wanted him to be able to spend that time with us and have a good meal.
Yeah.
And he would always compliment her on her cooking. Now, he never did when they were married, but he always complimented, and I always wanted to know what was for dessert, too. She was efficient. She searched out and found all 3 homes during their married life that they bought. She was the one that she found the little house for sale that was a repo down a couple of streets down. She found the one in South Carolina where after we moved to Texas, the the alcohol and tobacco tax people raided the property because the guy that rented it from us had a moonshine still going on it. Found out later that had Mama and Daddy not had that man sign a lease, they could have confiscated our property in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And then after her mom died, she had one brother, Robert, who was Down syndrome. And when her mother passed away in 1969, then Robert came to Texas to live with our family. And she found a bigger house with 2 bathrooms. And we moved to that house. And that's the house that before she passed away that I sold. I never told Mama I sold her house. We knew that she wouldn't be going back. And she'd given me, you know, the legal rights to take care of her business. And I could never tell her we sold the house. Robert, her brother, just knew when his mother passed away, people would say, Robert, what are you going to do? And he goes, I'm moving to Texas. And that's one thing I want to say about my dad. My dad was so good to Robert. And, you know, whereas some men might have held a little chip there that, well, here we have the brother living with us and everything. Never. In fact, when Mom and Dad separated and divorced, Robert went through some sort of depression. He probably lost 50 or 60 pounds. But then here's Mama again. When Daddy passed away, Lord, Mama was the last one to see Daddy of any of the family the day that my daddy passed away.
Yeah.
She went to the hospital to see him. And later that day, he had a spell, whatever a spell is, and passed away. But when Daddy passed away, Robert was living in a assisted living home at that point. And Mama had the people from the nursing home bring Robert to the funeral home so he could see Daddy one more time.
Yeah.
So that was a lot about Mama. I have some other things about her, but I hate to keep rambling on if y'all have questions.
No, I just want to hear your perspective of your mother and like just hearing the fact that she, even though she divorced her dad, that she still cared about him, that it wasn't about not loving somebody. To me, that's a story of grace and compassion, because she wasn't going to tolerate the alcoholism, obviously. but she still loved him and still
And
cared for him and
yes,
still.
and you know what? Her dad was an alcoholic too.
Mhm.
And I, of course, witnessed that my grandfather was an alcoholic too. And I guess she had just had enough of it, and I don't blame her. And she was independent, and she was old enough, and by golly, she could take care of herself.
Yeah.
And, resilient,
Yeah.
and she could. And of course, we all know she could cook like crazy. And
was that big around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's tiny.
Yeah, I mean, forever. She weighed 115 pounds, and you went to her house, and there was always something homemade sweet there.
In the corner.
Yeah.
Always. Well, y'all know my problem. My addiction is food. And Mama was that big around and cooked it all for us. She made, all these girls that were in Rainbow Girls and this and that and other in the neighborhood. Mama did their wedding receptions. She made finger sandwiches. She made mine and Steve's groom cake, German chocolate cake from scratch. She made my brother George and Laura's groom's cake from scratch. And one time I said, Mama, we ought to go in the business to do this. We got enough tulle and netting, colored tablecloths, but that was too much work. She was the very first school cafeteria at this little 4-room wooden school in South Carolina. They pulled up a portable cafeteria building with a kitchen and tables and connected it to this little 4-room wooden school. Yeah, that's where I started out. So that's what's wrong with me. And Mama was and we saw the Kennedy inauguration on a black and white TV in that little cafeteria. And we saw the first, I guess it was Mercury space shot that went up with Alan Shepard and came back down in that little cafeteria.
Oh, neat.
Well, after we moved to Texas, one of the neighbors that lived behind us they were Catholic and found out Mama had been in the school lunch business. And she said, well, we need somebody to run our school cafeteria. Well, my grandmother was scared to death that she was going to take Forrest over there and put him in that Catholic school. And we were going to convert to Catholicism. I worshiped my grandmother. She didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mama took that
y'all
job
are y'all are not Protestant. Y'all are you weren't Baptist, right? You weren't raised Baptist. You were raised.
And we would be considered Protestant. There's Catholic and Protestant, but anyway, Daddy's family was Baptist Methodist, and so was Mama's family Methodist. Really,
that's what I was trying to remember.
Anyway, she took that job on, and she came home, and she was telling Daddy. She said, "I didn't know this, but the school or the lunchroom is behind to the milk company that delivered the milk for the kids." And I don't know how much it was. It could have been $75. In 1964, that was But anyway, she took on that job. And every week she whittled away at that milk balance till finally one day she came home and said, that milk bill's paid off. It's current, and she was so proud of that.
Yeah. So is that what she did? You said she was in the cafeteria. So did she work in the schools her whole life too? Or
after she and Daddy divorced, she needed to make a little bit more money. And that little Catholic school, that didn't pay hardly anything. I mean, she probably went to work at 7 and was back home by 1:30 every afternoon, but it didn't pay very much. And she went to work for Tarrant County in Fort Worth for their juvenile detention center and worked in their kitchen. And you ought to hear her, those little juveniles, them asking her what grits were. Now, you ask a Southern woman what are grits. Anyway, she said, well, it's just like ground up corn, but I don't know what else she taught them. But anyway, they wanted to know what those grits were. So she worked at the juvenile detention center cooking until she retired.
Food was her love language.
Yeah, food was her love language. And doing stuff for people. She would beat the preacher to the church on Sunday morning to go back in the kitchen and get the coffee pot going before the preacher got there.
Yeah.
That was Mama.
Yeah. It sounds like that's probably where she got some of that sass from. If she's having to be in juvenile detention, it's probably where she toughened.
Could have been. She probably had some stories that I have forgotten.
Yeah.
But she, like I said, she loved her some Cowboys, even though she'd say Jerry Jones's ass. She loved her NASCAR, and honey, she didn't watch anything but CBS because
The Young and the Restless.
The Young and the Restless, because when they got their first television, the first television network out of Charlotte, North Carolina was CBS. And honey,
Yeah.
she had a hard time watching anything on any other channel but CBS.
Oh, that's loyalty, man.
Yes, that was loyalty. You know, she would be shocked now to know that she had 3 kids. We had 7 grandchildren between the 3 of us, and now she has 17 great grandchildren. And we've got one little niece that just got married. So she could get to 20. And you know what she'd say? She'd say, girls, what were y'all thinking? To have all those babies. That's what she'd say. She also lived on a prime corner in West Fort Worth.
Yeah.
So she would host host. That gives a whole new meaning to have a garage sale. She would host the church's garage sale, because you know the Methodists, they have to pay their apportionment to the conference every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they would have a big garage sale a couple of times a year, or she would host the Rainbow Girls garage sales, and she had it down to a science. She had tables, she had it organized, they had it set up, she had clothing racks, she had prices on everything. She had a checkout table with a tally notebook and a metal change box. And not only that, she had cooked the lunch for the workers, plus the dessert, of course.
Yeah.
That was Mama. Some people might say Mama was nosy. And those of you who know Rennetta, that came on down the line, Dorcas.
Hey,
Mama
we ain't
was
judging.
nosy.
Well, I'm not saying nothing, but
I was like, first off, we ain't judging nobody. Why do you think we do this podcast? I said in the because I'm nosy. And I want to know the tea. So good for
That's
you.
right. That's right. Well, Mama was nosy. And
Speaking of tea, let me say, speaking of tea, there was always a big orange Tupperware pitcher in the top of her refrigerator with sweet tea. And I'm talking like a sugar, like what, probably a cup of sugar, a gallon or more.
just a cup.
Yeah, I mean, well.
Just a cup.
You can cut it with a knife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody knew Mama had the sweet tea.
yeah,
Yes.
well, that's what we say about Mom. Cody will look
It's
at me
something
because
sweet.
I won't sweeten it near as much, but he'll look at me and go, well, is it sweet? And I go, well, yeah, it's sweet. He'll go, but is it Nana
Is
sweet?
it Nana sweet?
That's right.
Nana sweet.
Nana's from East Texas. She knows how
That's
to make
right.
it.
Yeah.
Well, it's Southern girl.
That's right. That's right. Well, Mama had her sweet tea. Thank you for mentioning that. Well, Mama, especially in her last years and after she retired, she lived on that corner lot. So she would have her garage door open, and she would sit there just watching everybody go by. And she enjoyed seeing the people that walked in the neighborhood, because they'd stop and visit with her and everything. And there were a lot of younger families that had moved in, and she enjoyed that. In fact, right before I had to, she got sick and I had to move her with us to Kerrville, there was a young school-age boy, probably junior high, that walked by. And I said, well, how are you today? And he said, I'm fine. He said, are you her daughter? And I said, yes. And he commented and he said, has she got a little dementia? And I said, yes, she does. And he said, well, I wondered, because sometimes on a Saturday, she'll ask me why I'm not getting on the school bus or something like that. And I said, yes, hon, she does. Yes, she does. But anyway, one day my brother Forrest was there, and she was sitting in the garage doing her normal, looking. I happened to call her, and she was so mad at him. She said, he's got this big old truck sitting in my driveway, and I cannot see across the street. And she said, go move that truck. Anyway, I mean, that's kind of her. That's how she was towards the end of her life.
And like Nana, it was power in a small package.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She told him to go move his truck so that she could see. Annaliesa reminded me of this the other day, and this is so big. And you might want to tell this about how Mama, when we couldn't be there, how Mama filled the gap and represented us. You want to tell that?
Well, just that Meemaw was in West Fort Worth. And so we lived out in West Texas, which was 5 for her, 6 hours away for us. And oftentimes when people needed health care, they may go there just to get different health care that we didn't have available in rural West Texas. And so there was a little girl that had leukemia when we lived in Wink, and she went there, and Meemaw probably visited her no less than 5 times, if not more. And of course, probably took them toiletries and cookies and all kinds of things like that. And Jennifer Blessing, she visited her when she was there too with the baby. And so anyway, she would always stand in to go and visit and see people and show them love in her love language of cooking and just being present.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the little girl, it was a high school girl, and she had leukemia. I mean, they just found out she had leukemia, had her in Midland in the hospital for a while, and she ended up in Fort Worth at Cook's Children's. And I know that Mama even offered to the mother, and the mother came to the house and did laundry and that kind of thing. So all you had to do is give Mama, I don't want to say a crusade, because that word kind of takes away the importance of what she was doing for us, but Mama represented us well. If we said, Mama, we've got a family that's in Fort Worth and they need so-and-so, Mama to the rescue.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to serve is what it is.
When I went to A&M my first semester, Meemaw was a nervous wreck because I was involved in so many things growing up that she didn't know how I was going to eat because I couldn't cook, and she didn't know how I was going to wash because I didn't do laundry. I could fold clothes though. Lord help me, I folded some clothes. But anyway, the boys went to the ranch for Thanksgiving, and Mom and I would go to the ranch sometimes, but then we always went to Meemaw's house because Meemaw's birthday was always near Thanksgiving at the end of November. And so I didn't do any laundry that whole first semester of school.
How did you have enough underwear?
I took it. Well, I didn't wear them twice because I'm like my daddy. But anyway, I don't know how many loads of laundry I did at poor Meemaw's house. I mean, I probably owe her for her utility bill. I mean, it was kind of embarrassing, and we didn't run out of soap and we didn't run out of water, but poor Meemaw.
I know. Yeah. She asked me, she goes, how's that girl going to make it at college? Said she doesn't know how to cook. And when has she ever done laundry? I go, Mama, she's been busy in school. She doesn't have time to cook or do laundry. But anyway,
You figured out though, didn't you?
I did.
But there's probably just lots and lots of other things that I haven't even thought about. But I'll say this, that it still amazes Steve. I mean, Steve will say, the way your mother was before, her last couple of years. But it still amazes us, and Steve especially, how many of Mama's friends, neighbors, stay in contact with us, stay in contact with me. They may send cards, they may text. He said, your Mama really had a big influence on a lot of people. And I said, she sure did. There were a couple of girls, I say girls, they're in their 50s, I guess. A couple of girls that asked if they could speak at Mama's service. And of course, Dwayne was there, Dorcas. And I mean, it was a marathon.
Yeah.
But these people wanted to speak, and after it was over, Steve said, I'm so glad that you were able to let them have time to talk, because like he said, like Ann Smith lived down the street. We did her wedding reception, It was just special. I mean, the things that they said about Mama, she had a lot of influence on a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's such a good testament to just who people are, just the
And I'll tell you,
basics of who they are daily.
And I'll tell you, if there's anything that I hope and I try to do that my Mama taught me, was to be fair and honest.
Yeah.
And dependable. If you're going to tell somebody you're going to do something, you do it.
Yeah.
You show up and you do it. I don't know if I get it exactly to the 50 cents thing on all the kids' gifts, But if you're gonna spend $2.50 on one kid, you're gonna spend that on the other, or you make up the difference somehow. And that was Mama always. Daddy wasn't that way, and that's okay. People are different.
Yeah.
That was another thing. Mama would always be so proud of showing me her checkbook.
Yeah.
And saying, now look what I have here. She just wanted me to know. That wasn't that it was a lot. She just wanted me to know what she had in her checking account if something went wrong or something happened to her.
She had our funeral planned for 30 years before she passed away.
When
Our grandma's
after
too.
she and Daddy divorced,
Yeah.
she had her funeral plot. She even had her plaque paid for. She went to Greenwood in Fort Worth. She had all her funeral arrangements, and especially when my dad passed away and my brother and I had to deal with everything and nobody was on his checking account. Before I left town, she took me to Bank of America and she said, we need this girl to sign every account I got here because I don't want her in this shape when something happens to me.
Yeah.
I mean, she said, all you're going to have to pay for, and that was out of her money.
Yeah.
She said, all you got to pay for is my freight ticket back to North Carolina because she's buried in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So
But there's something about that generation, though. I mean, I feel like because that's something that we've talked about that, that it's because, and I say this next thing, like death is hard, obviously, but it's also just hard. Like there's a lot of stuff. Like if you take the mourning and stuff out, dealing with that kind of stuff is difficult. And I know like our grandmother Connie did a lot of prep work before her funeral or before she died. Grandma Annie did. And there's just something about, I don't know, having the foresight to think about what your family's going to have to go through and how I would imagine, because mom and daddy, like we know where the will is and everything's, and whatever. And, just that's such a testament to people thinking beyond what they need to. Cause like I said, if they're any kind of believer, you think they're thinking about us in heaven? No. But it's nice to know that they're, that they have the foresight to go, let's just make it a little bit easier when I die. They're not caring about that stuff,
Yeah, that was Mama. And here's what she would say. I don't want to be a burden to anybody.
Yeah, I don't want anybody fussing, complaining, fighting over anything.
For years, and one thing I didn't say, probably about 6 or 7 years before she got bad, she would say to me, I'm changing. I don't know why I couldn't meet that head on and have a real discussion about that. And I would just say, well, now, Mama, we're all getting older and we're all changing. I don't remember things like I used to. I didn't meet her head on with it. Yeah. I guess I don't regret it because you look back and you think, well, I'd have probably said the same thing again. Lydia, she did. She took care of everything. She didn't want to be a burden to anybody. And I'll tell you this, I have not ever sat down and really shed any tears since I lost Mama because, well, I don't know. She was so ready to go. She asked me for a long time, why is the good Lord keeping me here? I'd say, well, Mama, look at all these great grandbabies you're having. Look at all that joy and whatever. But she was ready to leave this world.
Yeah.
And there was a point I was getting ready to make with that. But here's the thing. Another reason I don't think I ever had time to just sit down and just want to cry my eyes out that my mama's gone is she wanted to be buried in North Carolina.
She had the pomp and circumstance.
She had the pomp and circumstance. Listen, we had her service. We had her visitation in Fort Worth. We had her service in Fort Worth because she had been there all those years.
She was buried in a red suit.
She was buried. She wanted to be buried in red. She was buried in her red suit.
I imagine.
Then we came home from Fort Worth. We did laundry, and the next day we flew to North Carolina. We had her visitation and her funeral there, and then her burial. Rained like cats and dogs the day before, and it was muddy and everything, and there were all these clouds all around on the day when we were headed from the funeral home to the cemetery, and the skies just opened up and it was blue sky.
Yeah.
And as we left there after that trip, my last trip to the cemetery there on that trip, Steve said to me, he said, You did everything she wanted you to do, said she would be very happy. You did everything.
Yeah.
But I never have been able to sit down and cry.
Yeah.
There
So,
was a lot of pomp and circumstance.
For a simple little lady, she had quite the exit.
She did. She did.
I just pulled up on my phone. I spoke at her service, and if we have time for me to read it?
Yes.
So I just said it's quite an honor for me to call this wonderful lady my Meemaw. She was humble, kind, a welcoming hostess to all, wrapped up in a feisty, spunky, and at times ornery little package. Today I'd like to keep my Meemaw's memories lighthearted. As many of you know, she was quite the cook. I'll be honest, the cookies in the corner jar of her kitchen were a bit crunchy to me. But I'd love to have another piece of that German chocolate cake. Meemaw was also a wonderful listener. She'd welcome my calls from 5 a.m. on, but we were always hesitant to call unless it was emergency during the Young and the Restless. She loved her Lord, and she loved the Dallas Cowboys, and you might find her putting money in the plate on Sunday mornings and a pool on Sunday evenings, depending on who they were playing. She grew up where car racing began in North Carolina, and I'm not sure if anyone else that can make the trip from Fort Worth to West Texas in 4.5 to 5 hours. She also followed me to Austin for Christmas one year. She was an excellent driver and knew a map well. She exited off of I-35 on a toll road, and there went her little red Mustang on a flyover, and I'm stuck in 35 traffic, panicking. Thankfully, she realized she wasn't with me after a few exits and pulled over to let me catch up. Candy, Cheez-Its, and sweet tea were her dietary staples. She always threatened after Allison, my oldest cousin, broke her leg that if any of us ever got hurt, she would beat us all the way to Cook's Children's Hospital. And ask if anybody had ever taken her up on that. She instilled kindness, integrity, a servant's attitude, and the knack of finding a good bargain in all of us. Thursday before she left us, she said to Mom, Dad, and me, help me rest. Meemaw, I know you are resting well with our Savior. We love you.
We could not have made that any more beautiful.
I know.
It just sums up a whole hour conversation.
Yeah, right there.
Perfect. And I will say that I can see clearly that in your in both of your lineages, I can see that in both of you, just from knowing. So that's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, because I know that's personal. So thank you for sharing
You're welcome.
that. Yeah.
But I don't think I ever met
Rennetta,
Miss
tell
Nancy,
me
but I'm like, I feel like I missed out.
You did.
I'm a little
It
upset.
was a menace.
Myself.
She's 1 in a million.
So
Yeah,
it was one of those
it was a
ones
mess.
that I think because I got just the very last couple of years, I think, when it was just all sass. So I got all the sass.
You know, she never said a cuss word. She'd substitute shot for shit, but
Yeah.
and by the end, let them roll. Well, wait, can I tell about Pawpaw? So she had her gallbladder out. That's one she did say before then, but she had her gallbladder out, and like Mom said, you know, he always was around when things happened. You know,
nosy. He was nosy too.
He'd bring her whenever she'd cook us Thanksgiving dinner. He'd always bring her a poinsettia because her birthday was coming up for her birthday.
He never did that while they were married, but
Meemaw had her gallbladder out, so Mom and I went to check in on her, and she was in recovery, and that's back when they let everybody and their dog in, you know, before they had rules in the hospitals. And so anyway, she looked over and she saw Pawpaw coming in. Pawpaw was a mechanic in the Air Force, and so he wore those Dickies coverall one-piece jumpsuits his whole life. That's, I guess, what I remember. And anyway, she goes, "Who's that jackass in those coveralls coming up in this room?" And you knew that the anesthesia must have been talking, because Meemaw usually didn't talk like that around the grandchildren. But I was grateful that she got to meet both of my babies before she passed away. So Camille was 2 and Lane was 6 months old, and she got to hold him and meet both of them. And Camille and I would go and visit her in the little home she was in, and that made her happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's so awesome.
Well,
I'm
and
so glad y'all got to do that.
and actually, Dorcas, she passed away on Thursday after Cody graduated from high school that
Yeah.
weekend before.
Mhm.
We had come to Houston for Cody's graduation, and she was in a memory care facility at that point. And so I had hired a lady to go by there extra time to kind of sit with her and check on her. We were gone out of town. And so we did Cody's graduation, went out to eat. And then I think the next day we went to an Astros game on a Sunday. We drove home after the ball game on Sunday night. So I went to see her on Monday since I'd been gone. And we're just sitting there watching TV in her room, and The View was on. Now, I don't watch The View. But at the time, Sharon Osbourne was one of the hostesses on there, host. And I just making conversation, I said, that lady is so attractive. Her hair and her makeup, she just always looks so nice. And there's a beat of a silence.
Mhm.
And Mama has dementia.
Yeah.
She looked over at me and she says, yeah, but she's got that crazy husband. And so I came home telling Steve about that. And then that was Monday. And on Wednesday,
Yeah.
the hospice nurse aides came to give her bath. And they called the hospice nurse in charge and said, something's different with Nancy. She's not giving us the devil about her bath. I mean, because she was usually I don't need a bath today. What are y'all doing here? You come back tomorrow. I don't need a bath today. Just being real ornery, And so on Wednesday, the hospice aide said something's not right because Nancy's not being her normal self. And of course, they called us. And then on Thursday morning, I go back, and Annaliesa came during her lunch. And that was when she was asking us to help her rest.
Yeah.
Help her rest.
Yeah.
But on Monday, she was talking about Ozzy Osbourne. So there were shades of cognizance,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But you were asking about being a mama, and I'll make
Yeah.
this quick because I know we've been talking to y'all a long time.
No, we're fine.
And I know, Lydia, you have it in a new role as the mama of 4 little girls, but I can say that being a mother is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Being a mama is the very best. And you're always going to be proud of your children. And I know Sylvia knows this.
Absolutely.
And Dorcas knows
Yeah.
this. You're always going to be proud of your children. Annaliesa, I've always wondered, she's such a beautiful girl that for years I've said to Steve, who does she look like? She doesn't look like me, and she doesn't look like you. Well, Nana said she looked like the Smiths were some of Mary's people. I don't know who they were. But thank God the Smiths were in the mix.
Funny.
So this is a special girl here. And you should see her be a mama. She's the best mama, and she takes these kids out on all these adventures. Now, what other mother thinks when they're going to the grocery store on the 4th of July to tell the kids they can pick things out to have to eat that day for the 4th of July meal, but it has to be red, white, or blue? Now, who thinks of that? That's my girl that thinks of that.
Yeah.
Now, she's an awful lot like her daddy. She's got her daddy's good qualities.
Yes.
Had I known I was really going to talk about her a lot, I'd have made about 6 pages of notes. But she's got her daddy's good qualities, but I'm still trying to figure out who she looks like. But
that's funny because Mariah doesn't look like me or her dad either.
Yeah.
So I think Mariah, no, she looks like, well, I guess her body type. I think, where did you get this cute little body from? Because I'm built like a brick house, and her dad is tall and thin, but she looks like Manuel's mom's sister's family. Well, Manuel's mom's family. So not Manuel's mom, because Manuel's mom looks like Ariel, just thin and tiny and just, but Manuel's mom, Manuel's aunt, all looks like Mariah. I've seen pictures of them recently, and I'm thinking, oh, that's where she comes from. So that's good.
Yeah.
So it's in there. It's in
yes.
there.
Yes.
No, well, Rennetta, tell me just really quickly about becoming, when you think about, because you told us that you and Steve were married, and you talked about, your the kids being with Mary and Lloyd and all that. But when you became a mom for the first time, what do you remember? What do you remember about finding out you were pregnant? Were you planning it? Was she surprised? Uh, what do you remember about that time, about finding out about
All
being
about me mom
pregnant?
beating me to the hospital. I'll tell that. Well, Steve and I married in 1980, and Annalise was born in 1984. So we were married almost 4 years. Yes, she was planned.
Mhm.
And we had planned it. We had a little bit of a detour. It might not have been quite 4 years, but after Steve coached 1 year in Fort Worth, he took a job in pharmaceutical sales. And then after that, we were in Humble one weekend, and a family friend offered Steve a job in oil field sales.
Mhm.
And it was one of those deals. He thought, well, I'm going to try this out. Well, that was right before the rock bottom fell out in 1982. And I had not resigned my teaching job in Fort Worth, but he was living at Mary and Lloyd's, and I'd come down there and stay a week, and Dwayne and I would hang out. You can ask him about that. Dwayne and I would hang out during the day and watch soap operas and go get food and stuff while everybody else was at work. Lloyd was still working then. And then Steve said, I don't know about this job. He said, I'm not getting any orders. So he resigned from that job and came back to Fort Worth. So we might have had a year detour there from having children sooner, but she was very much planned. It didn't take long at all for me to be pregnant. And in fact, we had a trip planned to the Bahamas. And I had a summer job working in a little small private hospital lab doing the billing.
Mhm.
And I told these ladies, these two older ladies I was working with, I said, man, I'm just worn out. I'm just worn out. When I get home, I have to just lay down and take a nap. And they go, I bet you're pregnant. I said, oh, no, I'm not pregnant. And they said, you bring us a specimen in the morning and we're going to check it. Well,
see if the rabbit
guess what?
dies.
They showed me, that was before these pregnancy tests in the they showed me that and they said, you're pregnant. And I said, really? So no cell phones, I called Steve at lunch at the field house or wherever he was. I said, guess what? I'm pregnant. And he goes, how? Or something like,
Well,
and I am. What are you going to do about our trip? I said, I'm not dying. I'm just pregnant. We're going to go on a trip. Anyway, Mama, I was 32. So, I was 28 when we got married. And Mama was worried about me being older, having this baby, because she did have a brother who was Down syndrome.
Mhm.
And then I was 36 when I had Blake.
Mhm.
And I had 2 miscarriages between having Annaliesa and Blake. And finally we got our Blake.
Yeah.
He was the one meant to be. But, I went into labor one Thursday night right after Knots Landing was off. And I told Steve, I said, I'm going to go take a shower and put my makeup on and fix my hair, because I was doing natural childbirth too.
Oh,
He had asked me, he said, have you ever broken a bone? No. You still have your tonsils? Yes. Have you ever been in the hospital? No, except when I had mono when I was in college. He said, and you're going to have this baby natural childbirth? I said, I don't want them putting a needle in my back.
Yeah.
Well, so I got all duded up and I called Mama and I said, Mama, I think I'm in labor. Well, I got fixed up and picked my bag. We got my bag packed and we drove from our house downtown Fort Worth. It was midnight. There stands Mama out in the middle of the hospital parking lot by the door where you go in the hospital, in the parking lot, motioning Steve into a parking place. Now, would you stand out in downtown Fort Worth right now and do that? She beat us to the hospital.
Yeah.
But
And
that
had your
was
parking
Mama.
space.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, what took you so long? We could have picked any parking place there, but she was motioning Steve into the parking place. So, and she was a little worried, like I said, about me being pregnant at my age, because she didn't know how that was going to go, but it went.
Yeah.
It went. I had an epidural with Blake. but that's because I was going to get my tubes tied, and they told me to get my tubes tied, I needed to have the block. After that, I said, Lord have mercy, this was the Mercedes of childbirth.
Yeah, don't be a hero.
Sure.
Yeah, get the drugs.
And then there was Annaliesa, who had her babies early. And I'm like, I was in shock. I never had any problems. Mama didn't have any problems. And there's Annaliesa, you had Camille, 3 weeks early? Mm-hmm. And Lane was a month early, but they're perfect babies. But, I was just surprised that her pregnancy went a little differently than mine.
My best friend says I have to do everything efficiently, even
You do.
growing babies.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. Why do it in 40 weeks when you can do it in 38? Like, I don't understand. It's called
35 and 5.
That's fun. And then how long between, so you had your baby girl, and what was like the first, couple of days or weeks with being a new mama?
It was perfect that it was a baby girl.
Yeah.
And we didn't know at that time, they didn't do the gender things, or they didn't do sonograms really back then unless you had an issue or something. So we had our baby girl first, which was perfect for me. Oh, and her name, Dorcas, you may have heard where we got her name. Well, of course, I had the baby name book that everybody has, and I'd made a list of names that I liked, and we were at Lloyd and Mary's at Christmas in '83, and we hadn't come to any decision on names or anything. And I asked Shannon, I said, Shannon, have you got a girlfriend? And he goes, yes. I said,
what, 4?
I guess about 4. And I said, well, what's her name? And he says, Annaliesa. And I said, well, where does she live? Well, she lived down on the corner about 2 or 3 houses down. And I looked at Steve and I said, Annaliesa, isn't that a pretty name? And he said, yes, it is. And so we never could quite come up with anything. And finally, he liked the name Marie. So that's how she became Annaliesa Marie, is because Shannon's little girlfriend was Annaliesa.
Well, Shannon, he's coming in clutch, isn't he?
He is. He is.
That's
yes.
Fun. Yeah.
And then had she been a boy, she would have been Blake. But we didn't know what was going to go with Blake. And finally at the hospital with Blake, we finally said, let's just do Stephen Blake, which is kind of it's like Michael Dwayne, I mean, you go by your middle name and all your legal documents, Stephen Blake or Stephen B. And so if I had to do that again, I don't know, Blake O'Quinn. There's nothing wrong with Stephen Blake, but, it's just, I should have known that.
It has to flow. There has to be like a synchronicity to it.
Flow.
Yeah, it has to flow. There has to be a cadence. Yes, there has to be a cadence. I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about that. Absolutely.
And that's
100%.
Another thing, and Daniel would know about this. When you are in the school business, there are absolute names you would never name your child.
True.
Because you had a student or something that that you wouldn't want to be reminded of.
It's okay to say hated, Rennetta. You can say it. It's okay.
It must be bad. I heard some screaming.
Oh, no.
And that reminded me something about the name Stephen Blake, Stephen B. Anyway, but yeah. And so when we went to spell Annaliesa, I said, well, I want to spell it Annaliesa. And Steve goes, why? Nobody will be able to spell it right. And I said, listen, I've been teaching school all these years. There's 16 ways to spell Debbie. And I said, I have tried to spell everybody's child's name correctly. And I said, I have the right to spell my child's name as I want to. So that's the reason she's Liesa.
Yeah.
Annaliesa.
No, I don't think that's hard
there
to
you
spell.
go.
I think I get your name wrong a lot, but I get hers right, I think.
It's okay. I've been used to my name being misspelled all my life. My grandmother Ren and then Nettie, but at least I'm Rennetta and not Renetti.
Yeah. Well, how far between Blake and Annaliesa is there?
There are 4 years. Oh, that's another story. I'm almost efficient with some things too. Steve always said it was because the stress of the school year was winding down, but I had both children in February. So if you count that one back, I think it's really May. But anyway, He used to say that it was when the stress of school was off that I got pregnant both times.
That makes
Anyway,
sense.
I was
You
expecting.
punctuated your year, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty good for an English
I was going to
teacher.
say we know
Kicking
what
off
you did that
summer.
summer.
Yeah.
I was expecting. Let's see, Annaliesa was a week late. She's February 24th, and Sylvia Blake is February 19th.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I
Well,
didn't
your,
know that.
my birthday
February
weekend.
Yes.
19th.
Yeah.
Oh,
So Blake, Annalisa was a week late. Well, I didn't think anything about it, and I was planning her 4th birthday party, and for Saturday the 20th. And I wake up on the morning of the 19th, and I'm in labor. And so, as we're headed out the door to the hospital, she was with us, and Mama met us at the hospital. Yes, she did. As did Granny Shahan, and Granny's another story.
yeah.
But anyway, as we're headed out the door to the hospital with Annalisa in tow, I said, "Here are the birthday party favors. You and Mama and Mary, because Lloyd and Mary were coming for the birthday party. Y'all make some Kool-Aid and pick the cake up at the lady's place." So I had Blake on the 19th, and I was in the hospital. Steve and Mary and Mama hosted her 4th birthday party.
Yeah.
Well, happy
So that's
birthday.
Yeah.
And there was Mary was so determined. She was writing down, she wanted to make sure everything was perfect since I wasn't there. And she was writing down every gift and who gave it to Annalisa and everything, so I would know. And she said, but there was just this one thing. And she was so worried about that. And finally, when I got home, or she told me, I said, I got that for her. And she was so panicked because she had a lost gift giver, and she
Yeah.
didn't know who it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you had Blake, that bouncing perfect baby boy.
And we didn't know his gender either. And
Yeah.
that was just God takes care of you. We
Yeah.
had that boy. And you do know that after they laid him up on my chest, he TT'd on me.
Oh,
You do
Oh.
know that.
We didn't know
And
that.
I
so,
didn't know.
you know,
Welcome home,
being a
Mom.
little boy.
So with your children growing up, what are some of your favorite memories of raising your kids? If it's like ours, it's, just the sports and the activities and being in life with them. But what are some of the things
They
you
were
missed of
good.
growing up?
These kids now, oh my gosh, they've got so much energy. I'm worn out sometimes. And sometimes Steve and I'll say, do you remember our kids are requiring so much attention and whatever? And that's not a bad thing. We are very blessed that they're active and smart and whatever. But our kids, I don't know, they just didn't seem to require so much from us hands on.
I think we were
You know?
younger.
Yeah,
were younger.
Yeah,
we were
that
younger.
was when you were young. Yeah.
Yes. But gosh, off the top of my head, I think the major thing I can say is I've just always been happy and blessed with our 2 kids. And they both have accomplished so many things coming up. Annalisa always strove to be the best. She's the one that read the 85 books in 1st grade for accelerated reader points because, you dangle that carrot out in front of Annalisa and she's on it. Through her junior high, she wanted to excel in academics and did the UIL events and played ball. Of course she played ball. She was her Nana's girl, her daddy's girl. Of course she played ball. And of course she was heads taller than the boys. And of course she was going to pound the volleyball and shoot the basketball. In high school, the beauty of being in a small town school is kids can do anything they want to do and nobody discourages them. And she didn't have time to learn how to cook or do laundry because she was doing everything. I guess personally, one thing, and Dwayne and Lloyd were there when this happened, and I guess this is just a personal thing to me, is she did the number sense and the calculator and all of that, but I coached the journalism event. And when she was a sophomore, Lloyd and Dwayne came to UT to watch her one act play made it to state. And not only was she in one act play at state, she was competing in headline writing in journalism for me. And Dorcas, she was wearing the dress that we bought for her to wear to yours and Dwayne's wedding, this beautiful navy blue sheath dress.
Yeah.
But she had to get from the stage and change clothes and get to the journalism awards. And we had to run up this hill in Austin to get there. And we're sitting there and they announce the 6th place winner and the 5th place winner and the 4th place winner. And Dwayne's sitting by me, and I grabbed Dwayne's hand and I said, she gets a big medal. She's going to get a big medal. Because the 4th, 5th, and 6th get medals about like this.
Yeah.
And the others are like this.
Yeah.
And I grabbed his hand, and he's looking at me like, man, she's wild. And I looked at Steve down the road. He's down there by Lloyd. And I looked, and we're looking at each other because we've been this road with everybody else's kids.
Yeah.
And loved every minute of it. And our girls up there, and they get there, and they announce 3rd, and they announce 2nd. And she was a state champion in Class A in headline writing. And that's probably, that's not the most important thing she's ever done in her life. What she's doing right now is more important. But that was just a fine thing. And Lloyd and Dwayne were there, and her friends, the twins from Wing, were there.
Yeah.
They were seniors. They won stuff there in that same, in spelling. And so that was neat. And then, okay, she went off to college. And it was neat.
I'm going to interject
Go
quick,
ahead.
though. But mom being mom, and you've heard about me, mom. So
Yes.
my senior year, I was still writing headlines for her.
Oh, yeah.
And she told me if I was going to miss a school day to go to a journalism meet, that I had to participate in more than one event. I couldn't specialize, like I'm a horse guy at the Olympics. You can't be a specialist. So she needed another person to be on her feature writing team.
Yes.
So she made me write features, and I mean, I don't know that I knew what I was doing, but I tried. So then I wrote features at district, and I happened to get to regionals, and I wrote features and I don't remember. And I wrote features at regionals, and I happened to make it to state, and then I wrote features at state, and I made it to state and got 3rd place.
She got 3rd place in
All
state.
because she wouldn't let me just go miss a day of school for one event.
Yeah.
Sorry. See, there's a lot of water under the bridge here that I haven't forgotten, but later I'll think about it. I'll think about it. Thanks for remembering that. Well, then, it had been her daddy's dream for her and Blake to go to A&M, because he could have gone to A&M, but he went to Sam, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with going to Sam. At our dinner table, we'd talked about A&M a lot, and she not only was accepted, but actually was it your junior year? No, it was her senior year. Anyway, she was accepted, and then she got into the Partnership for Primary Care program for medical school. And so we were very, very proud of that. I don't know. I could go on and on. She had opportunities. There was somebody from a junior college that saw her at the regional volleyball tournament and wanted to know if she would come there to play volleyball. And she said, I've been accepted to A&M, and that's where I'm going to go, and whatever. But then you switch to Blake. She did so much. She was so successful and everything. And then you switch to Blake. She goes 501 mile from home, like in another state. We sent her off to A&M, and I'll never forget sitting in the Pizza Hut across the street from campus, and I couldn't even eat because I was trying to keep from crying. And we get her back to her dorm room, and she's out there to tell us goodbye. And finally, Steve says, come on, Mama, we've got to go home. And we had to leave there and drive to Plains, Texas from College Station and leave our girl. But we were happy. She had a preacher's daughter for a roommate, and y'all know preacher's daughters are good girls, right? So we knew
Perfect. Angel.
that was Granny Shahan's granddaughter.
Should
that's
we
another-
tell
Necessarily.
Should we tell her, or do we just let her live in this
Oh, I
fantasy?
know.
Nope, don't tell her.
Okay.
I-
Yes.
I threw that
Let her
in.
go with it.
Yeah.
I threw that in as a conversation starter. But anyway, we left her there. And then it was really neat that with them being 4 years apart, that Blake got to do his own thing in high school because sister had been very successful. I even had a lady one day, and you just never say this to kids. There was an older lady in town one day, looked at Blake and said, "Are you going to be as smart as your sister?"
Oh no.
And
That's
you're
not
like,
nice.
well, let me tell you, he wasn't top salesman on the junior magazine sales because that's not Blake, or that wasn't Blake at the time. And every once in a while you'd say, "Now, son, you could work a little harder at this." Y'all know boys.
Yeah.
You could work a little harder at this. But he also did the math and the science and went to state. And he also did the sports, and they were in the playoffs in baseball. And he also wrote news writing and headline writing for me. And he didn't get to state, but he could have. He went to regionals, I think, he went to regionals, I think, almost every year in something in journalism. Kayla has passed my name on to a lady there in Glen Rose, and I actually have coached some journalism kids online this past year, and they call me Aunt Riri.
Oh, nice.
And
Riri.
I told the lady, I said, "Listen, you got a guy over there in the ag department. He could coach headline writing and news writing if you ever get in a bind." And as hard as this one works now, sometimes his daddy and I have to look at Blake and we have to say, "Son, you need to slow down. Your kids are getting older." And it's not that junior magazine sales. It might be those FFA leadership contests or those show animals or something. He works hard too. And I'm so proud of him. It's been my best job in the whole world. I don't ever remember it being a job, except when Annaliesa had to tell her daddy she was going to turn him into CPS if he whipped Blake with a belt.
Listen, Blake still is just the funniest. I can't remember what he texted Dwayne. He texted him late last night with a meme or something, and we got up this morning. We're having our coffee, laughing about this meme that Blake sent. So he still just is for you, Annaliesa, he's just always so proud of you and just loves you. He always says that it was like you and Blake were like his little kids, on the side because he just didn't have kids for so long. And just had you guys growing up, but that Blake
he was
just
always
makes
sweet. When
him
we
laugh.
came to town, we had a pallet on the floor, and we had whatever food we wanted, and we could jam out to Reba, and we could ride like hooligans in the back of a Ford truck.
What more could you
Can't beat
want?
that.
How better uncle can you get? Right?
Yeah, no, I know, and it's just he really does love you guys so much, and misses. Like, you don't know how many times he's like, "Oh, I wish we could be, in between, we could pick up our kids and just all move out that way to be around you and your kids." Like, when we were going to try to see y'all last week, we were just excited about getting to love on y'all and the kids.
Well, remember my freshman year at A&M when I came over and I made overalls for the Aggie football game?
Oh, yes.
And I was pretty sure your mom was going to be mad because
Dorcas called me and she said, I don't know if I should tell you what Annaliesa made while she was here, but it's this anyway.
I didn't understand it.
I hope that's okay. And I go, whatever.
Because Dorcas is always crafty, and I thought she'll appreciate this. I have a craft to do. So at A&M, you hump it when you yell, and so I had some overalls, and you decorate them because that's tradition there, and you wear your overalls to all the home football games. And so when you hump it and you yell, you stand up and you're kind of like this. And so I put hump it around the rear end.
She had me put hump it on her pants.
You pass that back to your
people. Going, I really don't know if we should put hump it on your butt. I don't know if your mom is going to be.
I know.
But we did
Dorcas
it
said,
anyway.
I don't know what you're going to think about this. I said, I don't know. It sounds like one of those traditions down there.
Well, no, it's tradition. I'm thinking, is it to put humping on
I
your
was
butt?
trying to figure out,
Is it?
Dorcas,
I don't
why
know
you
today.
were like so hesitant about the. I was like, it's just like bedazzling some overalls. What's the big deal with the hump? It makes more sense now. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, why were you worried about what we're
I'm
just gonna
gonna
think about
tell
some
you-
overalls?
But I'm going to tell you what, that Aggie stuff, at Blake and Kayla's wedding, my cousin Gary and his wife Jo was there, and they just couldn't believe that Aggie wore him and all that,
Mhm.
sawing him off and this, that, and the other. And I'll tell you what, it has made them Aggie fans.
Yeah.
If
They're
A
from
and-
North Carolina.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
from North
They're from
Carolina, so
North
they're Carolina
Yeah.
fans. But I'm telling you, if the Aggies are on, they'll text me and say, "We're pulling for the Aggies."
Yeah.
Joe will say, "Man, that crazy song they had at Blake's reception, that was something else." Anyway.
Yeah.
So-
We had an all white Aggie wedding there. Well, Annaliesa, just talk to me a little bit about, growing up with your mama, and what are one of the, probably the same thing you learned from Nancy, but what is one of the things that you think that you learned from your mama growing up that you pass on to your kids? Is there traditions, or is there, just habits or lessons that you want them to learn, that you want to pass on to your two sweet babies?
Well, the ability to cook may have stopped here.
Thank goodness for Thomas.
The problem is the stuff I know how to make is gravy, y'all. So we get these hips on us. And so when you're trying to eat healthier and not, it's tough.
Oh,
And what I know is fried and gravy.
Have you ever had Sylvia's eggs?
I haven't.
Oh my God.
They're
Sylvia.
just sunny side up, girl. They're sunny side up. Splash a little
Let me
grease.
tell you what, I can tell you exactly when that was. That was the summer of 2006. And I'm telling you, we were headed with Blake to College Station for orientation, or we had been there and came onto the lake. And I told Steve, said, those are the best eggs I ever put in my mouth.
Girl, this is a
Fried
fact.
egg.
This is a fact with my hand up. I thought, I wonder if Renetta's going to talk about my eggs. So,
I won't ever. I'm sorry it took me 2 hours
smash
in to talk about them. I guarantee you eggs.
You just
But you know
smash
what?
bacon grease on it, girl. That's all you do.
No,
Just
I
smash
watched
bacon
you. I
grease.
saw how you did it. But here's the deal. They don't taste the same unless you do it.
Oh,
You know how that
okay.
is? You try to make something that somebody
Girl.
else does.
Like a salad or a sandwich takes vitamin
Yeah.
C.
Yeah,
Well,
I watched you do it.
what about
Next
the
time we get together, girl.
Renetta, don't you
Huh?
make your toast a special way, like on the griddle?
Meemaw did.
Well, I just spread butter on the slices of bread and put it in the oven under the broiler and toast it.
Well,
Yeah.
Dorcas,
In the
remember,
oven.
like there was something
Those are
about the way
yummy.
that Renetta made the toast or
No, it's
something.
the grill
you
and
have
the
to brown the
bread or
backside.
something. Yeah.
Sometimes I brown the backside because that's how Steve likes it. That's not how I like it, but I do it just to, for him.
But that's
Yeah, but I
Meemaw.
think we
Meemaw
did it on
always
a-
had toast.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
on
we did
the
it on
griddle?
a griddle at the ranch one
That's
time,
what I was
and
like,
I
that's
had
like
not.
making that's
Yeah.
like making toast like Texas toast, except
Yeah.
it's not the
Yeah.
thick bread.
Yeah.
When we would be at the ranch or at the Dearleys, I had one of those
Those white
one of
griddles.
those cheap griddles.
Yeah.
That you do pancakes or something on. And I would butter my toast or my bread and lay it on there and let it start to get brown and then turn it over and brown the other side. Oh my Lord. That's the reason I ended up as big as I did, Lydia, because I could eat 2 pieces of that. And if there was any left over as I was cleaning up, I'd eat some more.
No, that's just what I remember either being invited out to the ranch and going out there, or Dorcas. It's like Cody really likes that. Like, doesn't Cody like the way that Renetta does the
Yeah,
toast or
Cody
something?
likes the grilled toast.
And I
Yeah.
remember that, and so like that's how I do my grilled cheeses now.
Oh,
is, that
yes.
kind of stuff, and
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
everybody has their
Yeah.
picadillos. It's cool.
I forgot. I hardly ever cook on that grill at the ranch anymore since I've got the stove.
Yeah.
I've just never. I've got almost a brand new one out there. I just never get it out.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
that's
to
the
give up
best.
cooking, but it's not working. I want to be like Annaliesa. It's
So
okay.
you don't, Annalisa, you don't cook at all. You really don't. You don't like to
She
cook.
does.
I do, but not.
Yeah.
I mean, like I made spaghetti last night.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it's not often. Thomas loves to
Yeah.
cook.
Yeah.
So
Listen, if that
and
works, that
he
works.
cooks well, and honestly, so one thing I've always worried about failing my children at is because Mama was a teacher, so she got to take us to school. We got to go to her room after school was over. Mama, we were home by 4 to 4:30, so Mama always had dinner on the table.
Yeah.
And delicious dinner, not just spaghetti. It was delicious.
Yeah.
And so I don't get home sometimes till 5:30 or after.
Yeah.
And so he a lot of times picks up the children, and so he's able to go ahead and get dinner started because we're all ravenous by the time we get home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to be mean to her when I said I want to be like
not at all.
Lisa, but
No.
anyway,
Your girl is
she just brought up another.
Your girl is basically a doctor. We don't have anything you don't have to answer anything, sister.
I know. She wears many, many, many hats, but she just mentioned something, and like, there's so much we could talk about if my mind remembered it. But thinking about the grandbabies going to school now, and of course, Blake and Kayla are in a school setting, so they're not far from their children.
Yeah.
But Steve and I were, and I guess we were both in the school business to begin with, but when we made our journey from Burleson to Junction for his first principal's job, we were there on a school campus or a school property with our children their whole school lives until they went to college. And here's the deal. I would hear mothers say things about, I was a high school teacher. I'd hear mothers say things about, well, did you know down at the elementary so-and-so? And I'd have to say, no, because I never get west of my classroom. Yeah. Because in Plains, the school was all one hallway. You started it from kindergarten all the way to high school. You could walk through the hall and get to every class. Yeah. And Steve and I were very blessed. I never went down to the junior high or the elementary and butted into anybody's business. But, we were right there at school if our kids needed us. Yeah. They went to school when we went to school. We were out when they were out. And, that was a big blessing. And today, the way school is, I might be worried if I took my kids and left them off sometimes at school, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a different time. And then y'all are in it's bigger where y'all are living now, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But the good news, I think the good thing there is that y'all are all there together and you got you got your mom and dad to help and, Tom there and you guys are doing a great job.
But you asked me what I learned from Mama that I'll hopefully pass on to my children. Mama and Daddy instilled that it was really important for us to love Jesus. Yeah. We were at church. We may not have been there every time the door was open, but we were there a lot of the times the door was open. Most times, even if it was talking about stripping cotton. And so we were very fortunate growing up in these small towns that we had not only our family, but we were away from our extended family and our church family it made it felt like home. The McAllisters and Wink and Plains. I still go back there and people ask us to their home or to spend the night or whatever it may be. So that was important. Mom can also, before there was ever a Pinterest, Mom can turn anything into something creative. And she doesn't think that she's creative, but she really is. Yeah. I can remember, so Blake and I were born 5 days apart. So we usually had our birthdays together. So she made a troll cake one year.
It was awful looking.
and she remember the year that we got rained out and we had egg races and Nerf gun fights in the garage. She could make something creative out of nothing and on a dime, which is fun. In rural America where there wasn't even a dollar store. Yeah. So
we didn't have a dollar.
She's really smart and she won't let that on. She was the salutatorian of her class in Fort Worth, Texas. She's super smart. And she also, one of the most awesome things is, I don't know how many children's lives she changed because she taught them to write and she taught them to write with a purpose. And she helped them to pass these state tests that you have to pass to be able to graduate. Yeah. And she never had a child fail her writing portion of her test. And so she taught me that it doesn't matter what God gives you to work with. You can be successful And as long as you put enough effort and grit and determination into it, and it's pretty awesome to see her be a grandma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I wish I had more energy though. Thank you. I just wish I had a little more energy.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Yeah.
But Mama always had a hot meal on the table that was delicious. Like, I'm failing my children. I also thought I'd fail them because I didn't know how to sew. So I taught myself to sew because Mama always made us homemade costumes for Halloween that were cute.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if y'all have seen the Christmas stockings she makes.
No, I was just gonna say you make the most beautiful stockings.
She makes the most. She taught herself how to do that.
Yeah. Well, Renetta,
I just always say that we're blessed, and Steve does too. We're blessed beyond belief.
Yeah.
We didn't deserve any of it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say you and Steve did a wonderful job because your kids are some of our most favorite people.
Well, thank you.
Just the beauty and grace of Annaliesa, and I certainly love that Blake. He just makes me laugh. I think because we're both a Pisces and we can sit and chit chat and laugh together. I get his humor.
Well,
they're just our most favorite people.
Yeah. Well, we talked about if we didn't make it, that we were just going to go on the road and sing country music.
Yeah, as you should. As you should.
I'm telling you. And Steve was reminding Blake just a couple of days ago, Callahan's got that quirky little sense of humor. And your dad was reminding Blake on the phone the other day about Mr. Fodiligo, Jamel, Jimmy Jenkins, and who else?
They were our people that rode with us on these long road trips to go see our grandparents all the way across Texas. And they'd have like a whole persona behind them.
Yeah, and one time she wrote a practice toss riding and signed it Mr. Fodiligo. And I go, how did you even know how to spell that? But, Blake made that up. But, going back to Mary a little bit, thinking about these grandbabies, Heidi, she's looking much more like Kayla or Kayla's family now. Steve has always called Heidi his beauty and Camille his cutie. Camille looks so much like Mary O'Quinn.
Oh, Heidi.
Heidi.
Yeah,
no,
Heidi looks like
okay.
Yeah.
Heidi looks so like Mary, and it's just unbelievable. She's looking more like Kayla and the Wyndham family now. But as she was younger, Steve would look at her and go, she just looks like Mom. And anyway.
Yeah. Actually, Blake and Kayla were here a couple of weeks ago before they went on vacation. And I've got those pictures. And there's one of Mary when she was really young. Like she looked maybe not even in her 20s, I don't think. But she looks exactly like Heidi. Or Heidi looked exactly like her. And they were standing there, and we were all standing in the little hallway at the other end of the house. That hallway's not very big. We were all standing there going through those pictures because that's the first time Blake had been here. And we were pointing that out to Blake and Kayla, saying just how much she looked like their grandma.
Yes.
Well, y'all, I appreciate you so much, and at least I'd love to get more into your story, but may have to do that later. And like I said, I'm a girl. I may have to have a perimenopause episode and have you come back on here because I'm in it, sister. I'm in it, and we're gonna have to talk about it. I've been talking about it for weeks, and we're gonna have to have you back on because I have some issues that I need to talk about. But thank y'all so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for just being open and willing to talk with us. I know this can be uncomfortable, but I do appreciate y'all coming on.
It was wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
You know what's the best thing is seeing your faces and knowing you're live. It's just good to see you because we don't get to see each other that often, especially Lydia and Sylvia. Sylvia, you don't know how many times I think of y'all up there in the lake having the good life, and I hope that Daniel's sleeping at least till 5:30 now.
Yeah, about. But it's hard to sleep later than that, girl. But yeah, we've enjoyed. Look, we have looked forward to talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Ever since you said y'all were going to be on, I thought, yay! So we enjoyed seeing your faces.
Thank y'all for doing this. And let me know when it all comes about. And I hope I didn't dominate the conversation.
No,
but as Dorcas knew,
we
I'm a
love
talker.
I'm here for it.
Yep.
All right.
There we
Well,
go.
y'all have a good
Yes.
rest of the week, and thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And for all of those listening at home, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Mother You Know, the Mother You Know, the Woman You Don't. Be sure to like, follow, leave us a rating, follow us on social media, and go check out our website at themotheryouKnow.com. And we will be back next week with another episode. Thanks. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.